Yesterday was a glorious day in the House of Representatives because Marjorie Taylor Greene headed up a subcommittee of the Oversight Committee. This subcommittee is the DOGE subcommittee, and they had a hearing specifically about the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting gets over $500 million a year, and they distribute that to National Public Radio and to PBS, the public broadcasting system. These are things that were designed in the late 1960s, when I don't think it's a surprise to tell you the media landscape was very different. Nowadays, do we still need this? Does the government still need to pay for this? And more importantly, and more odious, when you turn on NPR, why are your tax dollars going to pay for left-wing propaganda that is hostile to our country and hostile to you, a conservative American voter? Well, the CEO of NPR faced some questioning from Congressman Gill from Texas. This is absolutely phenomenal, and it's so good, I'm going to try my best not to interrupt. Here, take a look.
Interesting, because a lot of your thinking, as expressed by your public statements, is deeply infused with economic and cultural Marxism. Do you believe that America is addicted to white supremacy?
I believe that I tweeted that, and as I've said earlier, I believe much of my thinking has evolved over the last half decade.
It has evolved. Why did you tweet that?
I don't recall the exact context, sir, so I wouldn't be able to say.
Okay. Do you believe that America believes in black plunder and white democracy?
I don't believe that, sir.
You tweeted that in reference to a book you were reading at the time, apparently, The Case for Reparations.
I don't think I've ever read that book, sir.
You tweeted about it. You said you took a day off to fully read The Case for Reparations. You put that on Twitter in January of 2020.
Apologies, I don't recall that I did.
Okay.
I'd no doubt that your tweet there is correct, but I don't recall that.
Okay. Do you believe that white people inherently feel superior to other races?
I do not.
You don't. You tweeted something to that effect. You said, I grew up feeling superior. How white of me. Why did you tweet that?
I think I was probably reflecting on what it was to grow up in an environment where I had lots of advantages.
It sounds like you're saying that white people feel superior.
I don't believe that anybody feels that way, sir. I was just reflecting on my own experiences.
Do you think that white people should pay reparations?
I've never said that, sir.
Yes, you did. You said it in January of 2020. You tweeted, yes, the North, yes, all of us, yes, America, yes, our original collective sin and unpaid debt, yes, reparations, yes, on this day.
I don't believe that was a reference to fiscal reparations, sir.
What kind of reparations was it a reference to?
I think it was just a reference to the idea that we all owe much to the people who came before us.
That's a bizarre way to frame what you tweeted. Okay, how much reparations have you personally paid?
Sir, I don't believe that I've ever paid reparations.
Okay, it's just for everybody else.
I'm not asking anyone to pay reparations.
Seems to be what you're suggesting. Do you believe that looting is morally wrong?
I believe that looting is illegal, and I refer to it as counterproductive. I think it should be prosecuted.
Do you believe it's morally wrong, though?
Of course.
Of course. Then why did you refer to it as counterproductive? It's a very different way to describe it.
It is both morally wrong and counterproductive, as well as being illegal.
You tweeted, it's hard to be mad about protests in reference to the BLM protests, not prioritizing the private property of a system of oppression. You didn't condemn the looting. You said that it was counterproductive. NPR also promoted a book called In Defense of Looting. Do you think that that's an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars?
I'm unfamiliar with that book, sir, and I don't believe that was at my time at NPR.
You tweeted that you read that book, but
I don't believe that I did read that book, sir.
I got to jump in here. I'm sorry. It's just too good. Congressman Brandon Gill, by the way, from Texas, is conducting this, and his delivery is so masterful. It's so understated. When he asks a question, she says, no, I don't think that. Well, you tweeted it. I got it right here. So it's like so great. He's such a Chad here. But can I just point out, and I think it was our colleague Mary Catherine Ham, or former colleague. She doesn't work for Town Hall anymore, but she did for many years. Mary Catherine Ham, I think, pointed out that this is the most white liberal woman moment ever. That she tweeted out that she was taking the day off to read this book about white supremacy and reparations. And then it turns out that she never read it at all. In fact, she doesn't even remember tweeting about the fact that she took a day off from work so that she could read the book. It is the most white liberal lady moment of our lifetime, and certainly of 2020, where that's all you saw from these women. And she is the perfect personification of them. And I'll have you know, by the way, at the time, the media was telling us that every election going forward was always going to be determined by the white suburban woman, the white liberal Chardonnay drinking, virtue signaling, yard sign, hate has no home here, liberal woman, perfectly personified by your brand new CEO of NPR, named by Joe Biden, of course. And what did Trump do when he ran for president? And all the smart guys in Washington, D.C. were saying, oh, we got a problem with white women. It's because of abortion, and it's because you do mean tweets, and you do all these things, and we got to win women like this back. And Trump was like, I am who I am, and abortion is wrong, and I'm not going to apologize for it. So let's go after the guys. Let's get more young men to vote for me instead. And son of a gun, it worked. All right, let's get back to this now. But I just wanted to chime in how delightful it is that every single time he calls her on something and she's like, well, I don't know that. I didn't say that. I didn't read that book. Well, you said you did. You tweeted you did. So not only is she a virtue signaling, shallow, thin as paper liberal with an advanced degree, but she's also a liar. All right, take it away, Congressman.
Do you think that a few years ago, NPR educated America about, quote, the whole community of genderqueer dinosaur enthusiasts? Do you think that that's an appropriate use of tax dollars?
I was not at NPR at the time, sir.
That's not the question, though. Do you think that that's an appropriate use of our tax dollars?
I think our tax dollars that we use are to be able to provide a wide range of
I'll take that as a yes. You do believe that that's appropriate. Your health advisor at NPR also stated in an interview that, quote, fear of fatness is more harmful than actual fat. Would you like to explain how fear of fatness is more harmful than actual fat? That's an editorial at NPR.
I am not familiar with the editorial, and I don't believe that was published during my time here.
It's called Diet Culture is Everywhere. Here's how to fight it. Do you think that that's an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars?
I think any reporting on health is an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars, yes.
And you think that editorializing that fat is not unhealthy is appropriate?
I don't know what that article is, sir, and I'm not familiar with it, so I couldn't say.
This is fake news. Do you think that basic accommodations like doorways or seat belts represent, quote, latent fat phobia?
I don't have an opinion.
It's also from NPR. Do you think civility is racist?
No, sir.
No. Well, your outlet ran an article entitled, quote, when civility is used as a cudgel against people of color. That was on All Things Considered. Would you like to explain?
I'm not on the editorial side, sir. I'm not familiar with that story.
You talk about how NPR is news. This is editorialization, and I'll read it. For many people of color in the United States, civility isn't so much social lubricant as it is a vehicle for containing them, preventing social mobility, and preserving the status quo. This is garbage. I'll spend all of my time doing everything I can to ensure you guys never get another dollar of taxpayer funding. This is complete garbage.
I'm sorry. I need a moment because I might get emotional. That is so brilliant and so beautiful. And I swear at the end, I've been hearing this since 1994, I believe, when the Republicans finally took back majority in the House of Representatives, led by Newt Gingrich. And this is after, 45 years, I think, without being in the majority in the House of Representatives. And one of the things that they promised to do was to defund the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and it never happens. It's never happened. Even when we've had majorities in the House and the Senate and the president, it's never happened. And I finally feel like we are this close. We are so close to it finally happening that we're really going to do it, that we're going to finally drive a stake in the heart of this. Why should we be bankrolling bias with our tax dollars? And as a radio host, you have no idea how infuriating it is that my tax dollars goes to finance my competition. People who get paid more than me. I work in the commercial sector. I have to deal with market concerns and advertising. Over on NPR, they can go without ad breaks. They can go, they have a totally different set of rules because we're paying for them. Imagine working at McDonald's and knowing that your money is taken out of your paycheck, a portion of it, to help finance the Burger King across the street. Imagine working for a Ford dealership and knowing that money is taken out of your paycheck to pay for the Mercedes dealership across the street. That's what everyone in the media, everyone who works in television or in radio, that's how we feel every single day when we see this. And our monthly ratings come out for the radio business. And guess what? I'm in the news talk department, right? So I'm competing against other talk radio stations. I'm competing with other news stations. And there's NPR. There's NPR getting the ratings. Because they play by a completely different set of rules, because they're not really dealing with the free market. They're not dealing with commercial concerns that radio stations have to deal with. I cannot tell you how beautiful this is. And forget about the fact that I have to finance and pay for my own competition in my industry, but I also have to finance people who have political positions that are not only completely antithetical to my own, but whose dominant left-wing anti-American voice covers every single second of airtime on NPR. And they are unabashedly pro-socialist over there. They don't even try to hide it. Take a look at this great question and answer from the glorious Jim Jordan of Ohio. Yes, that's right. He's glorious.
Former senior business editor for NPR.
How long do you work at NPR?
I believe he was there just over 25 years.
25 years? Award-winning journalist? Did he win any awards?
Our time to
Peabody Award? That's pretty important, isn't it?
That is
So
absolutely.
pretty distinguished journalist, right?
Certainly.
And he wrote a long story about what you do at NPR. Is NPR biased?
Congressman, I have never seen any instance of political bias determining editorial decisions. No.
Well, Mr. Berliner, in his story last year, wrote, in the DC area, editorial positions at NPR, he said he found 87 registered Democrats, 0 Republicans. Is that accurate?
We do not track the numbers or the voter registration, but I find that
Was award-winning journalist who worked 25 years at NPR, Mr. Berliner, was he lying when he wrote that?
I am not presuming such. I just we don't track that information about our journalists.
87 to 0, and you're not biased.
I think that is concerning if those numbers are accurate.
It's concerning. I mean, it wasn't 44-43. It wasn't 60-27. It wasn't 70-17. It wasn't even 80-7. It was 87 Democrats, 0 Republicans, and you say NPR is not biased. How about the big stories over the last few years? According to Mr. Berliner, again, he wrote on the Trump-Russia story, he wrote, at NPR, we hitched our wagon to Trump's most visible antagonist, Representative Adam Schiff. They said they interviewed him 25 times. Is that accurate?
I was not there at the time, but those numbers sound accurate. Yes.
Those sound accurate. But then he said when the Mueller report came out and Robert Mueller said he found no evidence of collusion, he said, Russiagate faded from our programming. Is that accurate?
Again, I was not there at the time. I couldn't say.
You couldn't say?
I was not at NPR at the time.
You didn't prepare for that? You knew we were going to ask you about this guy, didn't you? It's come up like 6,000 times already in the hearing.
I just couldn't say whether it faded from our coverage, sir.
How about this story? October 2020, the New York Post had the Hunter Biden laptop story. And one of those editors, I guess one of those 87 Democrat editors, said this: we don't want to waste our time on stories that are not really stories. We don't want to waste the listeners and readers' times on stories that are just pure distractions. Was that a pure distraction story?
Our current editorial leadership believes that that was a mistake, as do I.
Yeah, the whole country knows that was a mistake. Definitely impacted the election, or I think it certainly impacted the election. How about the COVID origin story? That's a pretty big story too, right? Mr. Berliner said, we became fervent members of the team Natural Origin, even declaring that the lab leak was debunked by scientists. Turns out, though, the lab leak is what most people think actually caused the COVID virus.
Sorry, sir. Is there a question there?
There is. You guys were 0 for 3 on the three of the biggest stories in the last 5 years. You guys were 0 for 3, and yet you maintain that NPR is not biased?
Congressman, I do not believe we are politically biased. No, we are a nonpartisan organization.
Nonpartisan organization.
All right. Great stuff from Jim Jordan as well. And I think it lays it out perfectly. And listen, she may continue to wave the flag of non-bias. Of course they're biased. Everybody is biased, by the way. If she were honest, she would say, well, listen, we all bring a bias to the table, but we do our best to adhere to as many basic journalistic standards. See, I don't expect them to be unbiased. I expect them to be balanced. You got your liberals, go ahead, do your liberal thing. But why not invite some conservatives on? Why not hire some conservatives? I'm pretty sure if you're in the business of talk radio, news talk radio, and podcasting, I think conservative voices, conservative broadcasters, conservative podcasters have proven over the last several decades that we're pretty good at what we do, and we could probably bring some pretty good content to the table. Listen, you want to hire your liberal people to do your liberal shows? Fine, but how about some balance and do the same thing since you're paid for by our tax dollars? But that exchange right there from Jim Jordan has very little to do with political bias, actually. You see, the fact that they were all in on Russian collusion and it turned out to be a fake story. The fact that they deliberately ignored the Hunter Biden laptop story, and that turned out to be a very real and rather consequential story that would have changed the election in 2020, but they chose to ignore it. In fact, they thumped their chest and bragged about how they ignored it. And the fact that they lied about the origins of the COVID-19 virus and actually publicly claimed that any suggestion that it came from the Wuhan lab had been debunked and was false, which is the opposite of the truth. You see, those three, as Jim Jordan just put it, that 0 for 3 record on those three major stories of the last 5 years of our life, it doesn't prove their bias. It proves that they suck. We're giving hundreds of millions of dollars to a broadcast entity that claims they do high quality news and reporting, and they suck. They got it all wrong. Yes, pull the plug on them. Pull the plug on them because we live in a completely different age where we have podcasting and streaming and commercial radio and commercial television and 500 cable stations and even more streaming video outlets. And we don't need to subsidize Mr. Rogers or Elmo, who makes plenty of money on his own merchandise sales and is now actually getting distributed through private corporations as well. They don't need our tax dollars to subsidize alternative television broadcasting that was created when we only had 3 broadcast networks, and now we're inundated with content. It's irrelevant and unnecessary. Same with the radio end of it. Defund it because of all of that. Also defund it because they put all of their money into content that is politically, culturally, morally offensive to me as a traditional conservative Christian in the United States of America, and it is absolutely reprehensible that my tax dollars should go to something so offensive. And finally, defund it all because they suck, because they got it all wrong. I think those are 3 pretty good reasons that this whole thing should wither away. And by the way, this is not new. We have been dealing with this for decades. Media Research Center, founded by Brent Bozell 38 years ago, has been chronicling and saving and indexing examples of reprehensible media bias for 38 years. And the folks at Media Research Center, who, by the way, provided incredible data and information for the congressman for yesterday's, they were cited over and over and over again. They put together a little montage from PBS in particular, so you could see the kind of quality work they've done over the years. Take a look, starting in 1995.
I don't think I have any Jesse Helms defenders here, Nina.
Not me. I think he ought to be worried about about what's going on in the good Lord's mind, because if there's retributive justice, he'll get AIDS from a transfusion, or one of his grandchildren will get it.
The man is on the court. You know, I hope his wife feeds him lots of eggs and butter, and he dies early like many black men do of heart disease.
The idea got into their minds that to kill other people is a great thing to do and that they would be rewarded in the hereafter.
But Christians do that every single day in this country.
Do they blow people up every single day?
Christians every day. People walk in the post office. I mean,
Fidel is now 61 years old, but his charisma remains as strong as ever. Fidel touched this young machine adjuster, and the man enjoyed a mild ecstasy. I know the feeling. He has inspired the majority with his charisma.
In 2010, there was a Tea Party rally at the Capitol. Did you have a sense from listening to that rally and the people there that they were as much interested in being anti-black as they were anti-Obamacare?
America is exceptionally religious, has always been exceptionally religious compared to the rest of...
Founded by people who were seeking religious freedom.
Well, that's a charitable way of putting it. Founded also by a theocratic cult of religious nuts.
Right.
This week, 82 years ago, Kristallnacht happened, and in that tower of burning books, it led to an attack on fact, knowledge, history, and truth. After 4 years of a modern-day assault on those same values by Donald Trump, the Biden-Harris team pledges a return to norms, including the truth.
Yeah. How'd that work out? The Biden administration returning to truth. That's PBS. That's what you've been paying for. Now, listen, thankfully, our country isn't in debt for tens of billions, trillions of dollars for as far as the eye can see. We're not saddling future generations immorally on money of theirs that we're spending right now. We have a surplus. We are in great shape. There's no inflation. The value of the dollar continues to soar. And we're in a position where we can afford to take a little bit out of our budget and pay for a corporation for public broadcasting, right? Because everything's... Oh, no, wait, none of that is true. In fact, financially, fiscally, economically, right now, we're kind of... So I'll tell you what, friends of NPR, why don't you buy yourself some extra tote bags right now to make up the difference for the money that we're going to keep instead of continuing to send to you. And maybe when we're solvent, maybe when we have a balanced budget, maybe when we've paid off all of our debt in this country, maybe then we can talk about starting a new corporation for public broadcasting. But by then, you will have either let it go bankrupt because you stopped paying for it yourself out of your own pocket, or you found that you don't really need it anymore because you've got plenty of options out there. Or maybe you'll just decide, like the rest of us has, that, well, it sucks and it's not worth your money. You know, yesterday I told you that this hearing about the Corporation for Public Broadcasting was going to be a death knell, and I'm doubling down on that today. Trump is cheering this from the sidelines. We played the audio of him where he'd be honored, he said, to defund NPR. He's ready for it. He called the networks a waste on Tuesday, and Republicans are eager to slash them right now. The momentum is there. And if rural radio and television stations get hurt by this, okay, I'm sure they'll find private donors who can step up. Like I said, they'll buy extra tote bags. Let's go. But the American people have spoken loud and clear. We have to stop bankrolling bias with money that we don't have. Let the market sort it out, right? Look how strong MSNBC is with their left-wing bias. They're doing great, right? So let NPR compete in the free market. That's all. It's time for Congress to deliver. It's time to finally pull the plug on Big Bird.